Hello again, it's Lock Noob. Now, I'm sure that most of you are very familiar on how padlocks are constructed and how they work. So you have a key with a bitting. Once the key with the correct bitting is inserted to the lock, the driver pins are all lifted to the shear line, allowing the core or plug to turn, albeit not too far because you've got a pin right at the back which travels down this cutaway to restrict the motion of the core turn to about 90 degrees. The actuators at the back of the lock pull apart the locking pulls which retract from the cutaways in the shackle, allowing this powerful shackle spring to push the whole thing out of the lock body, providing you with the open. Now, if you're like me, you'll have seen these monoblock padlocks, these shutter locks, and thought to yourself, well, I know how they might be put together, but I'm not entirely sure how. They've definitely got a key with bitting, they definitely have pins inside which move to the shear line, and the shackle definitely opens. But what is going on the inside of this? It's a bit of a mystery even to me. But that's where Ian comes in. Ian sent me an email to say, would I be interested in having a look at some of his cutaways that he made of shutter locks. And actually this is, I believe, the exact same lock, just by fortune that I just happen to have the same lock. And he sent me two, this one and a sterling shutter. There you go. And they show you exactly how the mechanisms come together. And I'd like to quickly whiz through how that is. Now, I've put Ian's email address in the description should you want to contact him. So the first thing is, let's have a look at the pins. So yeah, you can see here that you've got a core turning. You have driver pins which are at the shear line, and that means the core can turn freely. So far, pretty much the same. Then at the top, you can see that we have, if I open the lock all the way, you have two bars here. One is literally just an element which pushes under spring tension the shackle out of the way. When the shackle is moved all the way out of the padlock, you'll see that it's caught by another pin which is rounded, which engages with this cutout in the shackle itself. So it actually catches here, stopping you from being able to pull this whole bolt, if you like, out of the lock. That'd be a bit annoying if it fell out each time. Now let's close it back up and look at it from the other side. Then some very interesting things going on here. One, you'll notice that there is still a pin which restricts the motion of the core by about 90 degrees. There you go, albeit instead of pointing down at this axis, it's pointing in at this axis, meaning that the cutout on the core is at also a corresponding angle, something which I never really appreciated, but is really cool to see. The pin chambers are all here, and if you take this lock, you'll see that you can't really see them. That's because all of these pins are pressed in with a plug of metal, which you can just actually see some. Can you see that little round dot there? So you see some of the sorts of plugs which are at the bottom of these locks, but they don't make it very obvious because of all the brushing. So you have this pin down here which stops the core rotating too far. You'll also notice that there is a spring running up here with another, so if I turn this, another sort of brass pin engaging with the core. What does that do? Well, that's actually how the core itself stays under spring tension. This is a sprung core. Very, very cool. What you can't see in this lock is just here is what's keeping the whole thing from sort of locking up, and there is actually a mechanism here for a ball bearing to be released from the cutout once the actuator at the back turns, you can see the cutout on the actuator which will receive a ball bearing or bar, depending on what type of lock this is, moving it out of the way of this cutout in the shackle. So altogether pretty cool. Now, I'm just going to put these two here together so you can sort of appreciate them side by side for a minute while I bring in the sterling. Now the sterling works in a very similar way. So you have a cutout in the shackle, which you can see down there is a, well, if I move it upside down a bit, I don't know whether you can just see in there, you can see the edge of a bar or ball bearing just poking its way out, and that's engaging with the cutout in this shackle or bolt. When I open it, you'll see that this is also under spring tension, but the reason why this doesn't all pop out is because there's a pin running down here stopping this whole mechanism from just pinging out full stop. So that's another pin in this lock. Just like the other lock, there is a spring on the other side with a bar which engages with a cutout. It's rounded so it allows it to sort of go in but no further. That stops this part from springing out of the lock. As per normal, you have your standard sort of pin set up here. If I turn it round, you can see that just like the other lock, you have two other bars, one to stop the core from turning too far, which is the first one, and the other one to apply some spring tension to the core itself. You can even see the ball bearing on this side, which you couldn't see on the Corbin. There you go, and that falls into the gap in the actuator at the back of the lock. Very, very cool. So engaged, disengaged. Just brilliant work. So yeah, I mean, everything about the design of these is so familiar to a standard sort of padlock configuration, but also there's been some real considerations for lock manufacturers to work out so that you can still retain spring tension on the core, that the core doesn't rotate too far, that you can release, I guess, the shackle or bolt, but actually retain it at the same time. Just so cool. So I just want to thank Ian for providing us with these cutouts so that we can actually explore together how the internals of these shutter locks actually work. Very, very cool. I hope you found that interesting, and I'll see you all next time.